Okay. Perfect. Recording in progress and folks are joining us. So I want to say good morning and welcome. This is the Washington Main Street Affiliate Capacity Building Program workshop. So if you are a Washington Main Street affiliate looking for information about a grant that is going to help you hire your first executive director, then you are in the right place. And again, we want to make sure that folks are aware this is especially for our Washington Main Street affiliates, not our designated communities. We just want to be very clear about the fact that this is new funding specifically geared toward affiliates to support their capacity building. So very briefly, I wanted to let folks know that in this past legislative session, the Washington State Legislature put aside money for the 2021 through 2023 biennium to support folks who have real aspirations in rural communities of bringing on their first paid staff. So this would be for folks who are already a part of the Washington Main Street Network as an affiliate and who are interested in hiring their inaugural executive director. So if that sounds like what you're here to do, then you're in the right place. And very, very briefly, we want to also introduce the teams that are supporting this new grant program. And to do that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues, Brianne and Michelle.
Hi there, I'm Brianne. I'm the director of Washington Main Street. Jonelle and I work together at the Washington Trust for Historic Preservation to implement the statewide Main Street program. And we do that in partnership with the Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation. So this grant program, which is really a unique opportunity that we're very excited to be managing, is a really good example of that relationship between the Washington Trust and DAP. As Jonelle said, the legislature created this program this recent session as a program that DAP would administer. And they're in contract with us at the Washington Trust to kind of be your points of contact, with Jonelle being your primary point of contact and your support system if you're interested in this grant. So with that, thanks for being here, and I'll turn it over to Michelle.
Hi, everybody. My name is Michelle Thompson. I am the Certified Local Government Coordinator. I'm sure some of you out there are certified local governments and know what that is. And I'm also the Main Street Design Specialist with the Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation. So I'm here this morning just to kind of put a face to a name, to one of the faces to one of the names at DAP as a point of contact. And I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Maravik Quintanilla at DAP, and she's going to be your main point of contact there. So good morning, Maravik. Go ahead and take it away.
Hello, I am Maravik Quintanilla, and I am the grants manager at Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation, and I will be your point of contact for in regards to the contract and reimbursement for the contract.
So some of you probably know us well, but for some of you, this may be your first time seeing these faces, and we wanted to let you know who's going to be supporting you if you apply for and are awarded one of these grants. Additionally, I want to let folks know that we have this workshop set up so that we have a full overview of the application and guidelines at the start and time reserved for question and answers afterward. If you do have a question and you're afraid you're going to forget by the time we get through, you can always drop it into the chat and we'll be monitoring that. But please go ahead and stay muted and save your questions for the Q&A period that we have at the end. All right, with that, we are going to first introduce you to where you can find a lot of the same information after the fact. So we have on the Preserve Washington Trust website a page dedicated to the Affiliate Capacity Building Grant Program. And here you can find, again, the same information about how this came about, also what kind of criteria will we be looking at with the review committee, what kinds of expenses are eligible if you are awarded, and then the same guidelines that Maravik and I will go over, and the application itself, which is where we're going to start today. We're actually going to go through the application together. And what's great is The application is designed to be a very low threshold. It's in no way onerous. It's all of 5 pages. There's not a lot of technical information that you have to provide because, again, this is a capacity building grant. And so we recognize that those of you who will be applying are probably still building up your own organizational capacities. So very off the bat, simply providing us with points of contact. Who are you as an organization? Where can we find you? Again, we're asking about population because, as you may have already seen, this is for rural communities and especially prioritizing rural communities with a population of under 20,000 folks. So we do want to know on probably the 2010 census data, what was your population? I know they're still rolling out the 2020 stuff, but I don't think it's down to a community level yet. We are also looking for any information in terms of your board president. Now, if you don't have a formal board of directors, you could list a different contact here and then where term ends, because we do hope your board presidency has an end term. But if you're not the board president, you could there list your title, so an alternative title for that contact. We want to know, is your organization a nonprofit? Because one of the things we're doing is checking to see, again, in terms of your existing capacity, do you already have a 501c3 or 501c6 status? And that is going to be important because you're going to be best able to receive these grant funds if you already have an existing 501c3 or c6. We're also looking to see, what have you been up to as an organization in the last 6 months? And this is also going to tell us, again, that you are regularly meeting, that you have a leadership team, that you're doing your revitalization work. And if you choose to get into this program with us and receive these grant dollars to bring in a staff member, that they're going to be brought into a team that is doing work together already. Are you using the Main Street approach? We hope you are. And if so, this is where you get to brag about how you are doing so. If you're not already incorporating the Main Street approach, this is where you can tell us, here's how we're going to be. Here's our plan to enact the Main Street approach. And again, if you aren't already, we have lots of information about that on our website and we can talk more about it afterward. But hopefully you're already using the Main Street approach and can just tell us about your good works there. Here I want to draw your attention to these attachments at the bottom of the page. So within the application itself, anytime we're looking for an attachment to support evidence of the answers above, we're going to call it out. So we're looking to see, do you have an IRS letter of determination for your 501c3 or c6? Your articles of incorporation and most recent bylaws, can you provide that for your organization? And then again, we're looking to see if you can provide your board meeting minutes for the last 6 months. And that's just going to tell the review committee where you're at with your own organizational capacity. Section 2 is around your alignment and readiness to bring on an executive director. So one of the first things we want to know is, what do you hope to achieve by bringing on an executive director? You're applying for this funding because you think it's going to help, but what concrete examples do you have in mind in terms of what a staff member would do for your organization? What's it going to free up your board to do? How is it going to increase your capacity? What kinds of things would you be looking for them to do? And this is going to be important because, of course, one of the things we're going to be supporting the awardees in is developing a job description for that executive director. So we want to know what you have in mind already. Then we also want to know, what have you already done to develop a position description? Have you been thinking about this and prioritizing some of the activities and tasks that are better suited to a staff member than to your board leadership team? Being a point of contact for folks interested in downtown development and revitalization. Any of those details that you've already done would be great to know about. But I also want to say that if you're looking for assistance with this, if it's not work you've already done, but you'd like help, this is also where you can say, you know what, we're still in the dreaming of this phase and we want help making concrete ideas. That's where you can also say, here's how we want to be supported by the Washington Main Street staff if we are awarded this grant. And then I think this is very important. Why now? Why does now feel like the right time to hire an executive director? And that's really, again, just to say there is every reason to work toward hiring staff, but what makes now the opportune time to apply for this and actually work so that by like January 2022, you have an executive director on staff? What makes it feel like the right timing? And then any additional information around previous or existing challenges for hiring an executive director, like what has kept you from hiring someone in the past, that's just going to help us understand, again, what needs you have around finances, what's kept you from being able to hire someone in the past. Then, especially, we want to know what did your budget look like in 2020, and what do you anticipate it looks like for the rest of 2021? And this is partly your organizational capacity, and partly we're going to be awarding you funding, that's the hope. So are you prepared? Do you have good budget practices in place? Can you show us what you've been able to do beforehand, so that with these public funds, we can be sure that we're sharing this responsibility with you in a way that you're able to take on and be good stewards of those public dollars. If you, for some reason, don't have budgets for 2020 and 2021, please also explain that below. And we are curious to know, what does your budget look like? Like, what percentage is from contracts? What percentage is from other grants? Maybe it's not even from most of these. Maybe you're still developing it, but that's going to tell us a lot too. And one of the biggest pieces of the budget is, how are you going to support the remaining salary needs for an executive director during the grant term? So one of the things that's important to know and remember is this is both a seed grant, so it's about hiring someone that you're hopefully going to retain long term. So we have specifically created a 75% for part-time, 50% for full-time expectation around what is provided from the grant, so that you will then either provide 25% for a part-time or 50% for a full-time of that salary and benefits to help ease you in as an organization. You will eventually take over all of the salary needs for this staff person. So how are you going to provide that partial funding through the grant term? And even consider, how are you going to then sustain that? The next question down, how are you going to sustain that salary and benefits after the grant concludes? And one of the things, again, we're looking for the attachment of your budgets. Then we have existing capacity and experience. So one of the things we want to know is just, who will be the contact for Maravik? We want to ensure that you're getting this grant funding in a timely way. These are reimbursement dollars, so every month you're going to be in contact with her, and you're going to want to know, okay, is this the board president? Is it the board treasurer? Is it your bookkeeper? Who is it if it's someone different from the initial contact you listed on the first page of the application? We also want to know, what previous grant management experience does your organization have? And when I say organization, one of the things I want to be clear about is the people in your organization may have experience that will come into play here. And so even if you as an organization don't have strong management of grants in and of itself with your own title and your own organization, if the board members do, if your leadership team does, you can talk about the experience of those individuals and how they will support you as a part of your organization. So when I say organization, that includes the people, and what experience do the people on your team have? And again, I'll briefly mention, we are prioritizing already existing 501c3s and c6s. If you are thinking you'll need to work with a fiscal sponsor, you would need to identify how you're going to work to become independent from that sponsor. And then if you do have any previous hiring experience through your board, your leadership team, talk about that, because we want to know, again, what's your existing capacity? How ready are you? Or in the opposite, what kinds of needs do you have? What services are going to be essential for you as you prepare to develop this position, have a search, hire an executive director, and onboard them? We want to know so that we can best serve you. If you have already, some of you, staff, or if you have previous experience from a different position, your board leadership has other experience in supporting and managing staff, we just want to know so that, again, we have a baseline of where your organization's capacity already is and what services and what support would be needed to fill in any gaps that you have. And look at that, we're already down to additional information. So this is where you can say, okay, you asked me about my capacity, you asked me about my budgets, but here's what you also really need to know about this work. So anything that we haven't covered that you think the review committee should know about your readiness to bring on an executive director, about your challenges in the past, about your needs around support and services, things that you would expect from us as the Washington Main Street in supporting you if you are awarded these funds, you can throw anything that you think the review committee needs to know that hasn't already been covered here. We also want to encourage you to think about including a couple letters of support. So this could be from anyone like your local municipality, other nonprofits in your community. In any case, no matter who it's from, how can they speak to your readiness and capacity? How can they just, again, echo the fact that you and your organization are doing good work, and it would be even better if you could hire an executive director. And then the final section, we really want to just make sure that you're all in agreement about going for this and bringing on an executive director. So first of all, are you, if you are awarded these funds, going to participate in the services that we're planning to offer? Because again, if you're awarded these funds, not only are you going to get the funding itself, but you're going to be given services and support so that you feel very ready to bring on your first executive director. And has your board been able to meet and actually vote on this and show agreement across the board, literally across the board, to say, yes, we want this? And if you aren't able to meet before the deadline, which I'll mention, and it is of course on this document and everywhere else, is Friday, July 23rd. If you're not able to meet as a board, can you just provide a letter with all of the board supporting it? So we just want to, again, see across the board support. And then very last, a signature so that we can sign off and say, yes, we certify everything we have provided is truthful and accurate to the best of our knowledge. And we do have a list of all of those attachments so that as you're going through and doing a final review, you have a one-stop where you can say, okay, we've attached the letter of determination, we've attached our budgets, all of that. So that is the application. You have now seen all of it. And again, it is a very brief document. We want it to be accessible to you. We want it to be very easy to navigate. But if you are having questions, I see folks in the chat are being active and asking and getting some questions already answered. That's super. We will have our period for Q&A at the end as well. So now we're going to briefly touch on the guidelines around this grant opportunity. And this is, again, available on that website. So you can go and find all of the information we're covering in the first part of this workshop available on the website as well. One of the things I wanted to touch on is the fact that we are looking to work with Washington Main Street affiliates, and especially we're looking to see, are you rural, and do you have a population under 20,000, and do you already have a 501c3 and C6? We are going to prioritize those folks that do have their own nonprofit and are in a community with a population of 20,000 or less. And that is because of the direction from the state legislature. The intention is to really support rural communities that would find it really difficult to raise the kinds of funds without this grant to hire their first executive director. The criteria that the review committee will also be considering is, how are you showing that you're committed to doing this with us? So you're awarded these funds. What's there in terms of the application to show you have the, again, alignment, readiness, and capacity to bring on an executive director in the span of, 18 to 24 months, because again, this is only through the next biennium. So starting now, July 1st, and going through 2023, we expect to do all of this work with you. Then we also want to check and see, do you have the ability to be good stewards of these funds and actually work with us to create your capacity if you have some need in terms of maybe you've never developed a position description before. Maybe you've never actually had a search for a position. Maybe you've never gone through a hiring process. And that's good for us to know. We just want to know your existing capacity so that we can also provide the appropriate support in terms of services if you're awarded. And then again, we really want to know, can you use these funds within the grant period? And are you, again, this is something from the legislature, going to use the Main Street approach because they want this funding to go to folks who are specifically and solely focused on downtown revitalization. This is a lot of information, and anytime you have a question, I am available. So here's my information. Again, you can reach out to me for application assistance. We want this to be accessible and hopefully easy for you and your teams to do. And this is where I get to take a break, and you also get to hear from someone else. Maravik is going to be your contact in terms of the contract itself and the reimbursements for this grant. So she is going to speak to more of the obligations and responsibilities of grantees. Maravik.
Hello. Okay, so I'm gonna highlight key program requirements and obligations for grant recipients. So for section 1A, you will need to provide a scope of work. So that'll be an attachment. Also, under the work, it needs to conform to state administrative requirements. And for section C, there's restrictions on lobbying. You cannot use any of the funds for any kind of lobbying. That's a no-no. For the grantees, section D, you will also need to provide all documentation in regards to expenditures. So just in case there's an audit, you have all the documentation that's needed to provide an audit trail. And you will need that for at least 6 years after the end of the grant date. And then also first, when you submit your paperwork for reimbursement, we'll provide you the A19 form, and then you'll provide also all the documentation, which will also include publication for like advertising the job for the director. It will also include contracts and payroll documentation, anything that's any kind of expenditures that are related to the grant will need to be provided in order for reimbursement. You'll also, in F, you will need to provide, a completion project report that is acceptable to DAP. And then in G, you will need to provide a budget as an attachment. And so this will be your financial guide for your agreement. And you may exceed your budgeted amounts, but DAP is only obligated towards the grant amount that was awarded. So, but there's also leeway with your expenditures if they vary by 15%, then you won't need an addendum amendment for your contract. It'll be fine. For H, let's see. You'll have to fulfill your obligations in a timely and proper manner. And then for I, will maintain regular contact with us in regards to the progression of how it's going on, like with the grant. And then if there's any kind of competitive negotiations for professional services or contracts, you will need to be sure that you have sufficient documentation for that and abide by the guidelines for the state. And then also, none of your employees can also be, they need to be independent contractors and can't be state workers. And then for I, these are state funds and they're provided to you through this agreement. And for any reason, if the legislature doesn't appropriate it, then we have to terminate the agreement without penalty to the department. And then M, to the fullest extent permitted by law, contractors shall not identify, defend, or hold harmless the state agencies in the state and officials and employees of the state from and all claims for injuries or death arising out of or resulting from the performance of the grant. So, and then N, you agree to provide or purchase industrial insurance coverage to perform under the agreement. And then also under O, if you have any written materials, grant-related publications, we'll need written acknowledgement by DAP for all of that, and that also includes audiovisual and workshop materials. And then also for P, there's amendments under section 3, which is attached to the agreement. And all performance of the grant shall comply with federal and state non-discrimination laws, regulations, and policies. And we also encourage to utilize minority businesses and enterprises that are certified by OMWBE. And then also for any matches, by the grantee cannot claim match directly or earmarked or identified for this grant as much for any other grant without prior approval from the department. So that is the gist of the responsibilities of you as a grant recipient.
Thank you, Maravik. And I hope what folks take away from that is that Maravik is a true expert. She deals with these kinds of expectations and obligations for grantees and plenty of other grants. So if you have questions, and I'm sure you do, because it is a lot of information to take in, know that she is your point person. She will be the one working with you on reimbursements. If you have questions about the documents or expectations that she overviewed, you can always reach out to her. And then this next section is for you to know about the responsibilities of DAP in working with you. But those, again, are the responsibilities for Maravik and the department and not for you. So now we come to the information about applications. So we hope this has been enough of an overview that you think to yourselves, okay, yes, this could be the right time for us to bring on our first executive director. This could be the right grant opportunity to help us to do so. And so again, we want you to think about the fact that you have from now until July 23rd, it's Friday, end of the week, end of the day, to put together the application that we already went over. And when you do, we hope you will submit it electronically so that it's easier for us to share with our review team, as most of us are still, again, working remotely. And here again is what you are going to be submitting, not only the application itself, but all those attachments that we covered with the application. You have, again, my contact information, the website where you can find all of this same information, the application itself, these guidelines and procedures. And there we have it. We have made it through all the pertinent documents, and it is exactly 9:30. So what we'd like to do is transition from our overview to our question and answer period. So I am actually going to stop sharing my screen. We're going to enter into conversation with you because we anticipate with this new grant opportunity that there will be plenty of questions, and we hope to be able to provide you a sufficient and informative answer this morning.